Yeah, I am Suga from University of Illinois at Chicago. So today I would like to give a talk on omega-3 fatty acid. That is an important functional food, one of the functional food, and it is play different roles in the body system. So before going to omega-3 fatty acids, I would like to give a small introduction about the lipids. The lipids are an important constituents of our diet. It's usually referred to as fats and oils. It's called as a lipid. Fats are materials that are solids at a ambient temperature, and oils are liquids at the ambient temperature. And there are two types of fats are available. One is visible fats, the another one is invisible fats. The visible fats, it's like we can see in the naked eye, and it is easy to estimate their intake in the daily diet. The visible fats are vegetable oils, dairy products, and meat products, whereas the invisible fats, which cannot see with the naked eye, are immediately not noticeable. Those fats are cereals, pulses, millets, and vegetables. And I would like to give a small introduction about the classification of the lipids, how the lipids are classified. The lipids are classified into four types. The first one is simple lipids, and second one is compound lipids, derived lipids, and miscellaneous lipids. The simple lipids are composed of fatty acids and alcohols, which is formed as a triglycerides and waxes. Whereas the compound lipids, it forms as a fatty acid and alcohol, an additional group of like phosphatidylcholine or phosphatidylethanolamine or phosphatidylserine, like there is an additional group will be there. Those is combined with the phospholipids or glycolipids and lipoproteins. The derived lipids are is composed of hydrolysis of simple and compound lipids. Those are the fatty acids, steroids, eicosanoids, and ketone bodies. Whereas the miscellaneous lipids, it possess the it also like miscellaneous lipids are like squalene and carotenoids. Those are the miscellaneous lipids. So earlier we talked about the lipids. Now I would like to tell about what is the fatty acids and the type of fatty acids, and what are the fatty acids are very important. Like that. There are two types of fatty acids are available. It's there in the body. One is like saturated fatty acids. The second one is unsaturated fatty acids. In the unsaturated fatty acids, it can be divided into two types. One is monounsaturated fatty acids, and another one is the polyunsaturated fatty acids. The saturated fatty acids are the carbon atoms are in the single link, and there is no double bond. The saturated fatty acid mostly present in the coconut oil, oil, that is lauric acid. In the palm oil, most of the percentage are present in the as a palmitic acid. In the cocoa butter, the more amount is like 18 stearic acid. In the unsaturated fatty acid, the monounsaturated fatty acid, as you know, the olive oil has contains a lot of monounsaturated fatty acids, that is 18 oleic acid. In the polyunsaturated fatty acid means it's more than two double bonds. It's like either omega 6 fatty acid and omega 3 fatty acids. The omega 6 fatty acids normally is coming under the linoleic acid and arachidonic acid. Those two are the fatty acids, are the omega 6 fatty acids. Whereas omega 3 fatty acids are like icosapentaenoic acid, docosahexaenoic acid, uh, and short chain omega 3 fatty acid is alpha linolenic acid. Now I would like to go on the most important focus of an omega 3 fatty acids. There are three omega 3 fatty acids which is more important, that is like 18-3 alpha linolenic acid is a short chain omega 3 fatty acid. It consists of 18 carbon atoms and 3 double bonds, and this is a it can convert to small amounts of EPA and DHA. The second omega 3 fatty acid is icosapentaenoic acid, that is also long chain omega 3 fatty acid, and it is found naturally in some seafoods. The third omega 3 fatty acid is an important omega 3 fatty acid, that is DHA. As you know, that docosahexaenoic acid, it has contains 22 carbon atoms and 6 double bonds. And this DHA is an primarily structural component for the human brain and retina. So before we talked about the what are all the omega-3 fatty acids, now I would like to tell about the metabolism of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. Normally, that mammals cannot synthesize the linoleic acid and alpha linoleic acid because it is not present in the human body. Endogenously, it is not present. It has to be acquired through the diet. So, the once we consume the linoleic acid or alpha linoleic acid, it can be further metabolized to gamma linolenic acid through the delta 6 desaturase and elongase enzyme, and the final product will be the arachidonic acid, and it activates the icosanoid pathway, especially prostaglandins and leukotrienes and thromboxanes. Whereas in omega-3 fatty acid, this also is leads to the desaturase and elongase enzymes, and it convert to steroidonic acid, and finally to EPA and DHA. Um, this DHA is the important for the brain function and retina and cardiac function. And moreover, that one, if it is the essential fatty acid deficiency, so it lead to poor growth and it affects the skin and it causes dermatitis. So if we provide the 1% linoleic acid in the diet, so you can reversal this the symptoms. Next, I would like to tell about the hypothetical scheme of the relative percentage of fat and different fatty acids is and intake of vitamin E and C in the human nutrition. The Simophilus has postulated that the human beings were evolved on a diet, early diet. The ratio of N6 to omega 6 to omega 3 fatty acid was 1. But the past 50 years, past 50 to 100 years, the omega 6 was going high and omega 3 was going down. That now the ratio was the current ratio was like 10 is to 1 to 25 is to 1. And so now the consumption of omega 3 fatty acid is very low. It is because of the decrease in the consumption of fish, and moreover the industrial production of the animal feeds rich in omega 6 fatty acids. It is leading to the production of meat which are rich in N6 but poor in N3 fatty acids. Even cultivated vegetables also contain low amounts of omega 3 fatty acids than do plants grow in the wild. So omega 3, omega 6 and omega 3 fatty acids are not interconvertible in the human body. These uh, N3 fatty acids intake should be increased from the present diet. So now I'd like to tell about the sources of omega-6 rich oils. The linoleic acid is the major sources for omega-6 rich oils. The linoleic acid is a high percentage present in safflower oil, sunflower oil, corn oil and groundnut oil. Oil is around like more than 70%. And whereas the next, I want to tell about the sources of the short chain omega 3 fatty acids. The short chain omega 3 fatty acids is like alpha linolenic acid. The alpha linolenic acid is highest percentage present in the linseed oil or flaxseed oil, is around like 45 to 55%, and whereas in canola oil is around 6 to 8%, and whereas in soybean oil is around like 8%. So this is short chain omega 3 fatty acids. And next, I would like to tell about the preformed EPA DHA, that is marine sources of long chain omega 3 fatty acids. This it comes from the marine oils and body of fatty fish, liver or lean fish, as well as blubber of marine mammals such as whale and seal. Commercially available fish oils comes from cod liver oil, herring, mackerel, tuna, menhaden, salmon, and sardine. This relative amount of EPA DHA varies from around 5 to 20% and 3 to 26% of fatty acids, respectively, in these marine sources. Next, I would like to tell about how the flow of docosahexaenic acid from phytoplankton to humans. The humans obtains DHA from marine or riverine fish that live on phytoplankton and zooplankton. The brain endothelial cells and astroglial cells have only limited capacity to biosynthesize DHA. So either they can get through the dietary alpha linolenic acid sources of crop plants or seeds and some nuts. So the here thing is the conversion rate is very low. So the more amount of EPA DHA we can get through the marine source. Next, I would like to tell about how the omega-3 fatty acid is potential for cardiovascular health. The dietary intervention is one of the important approaches for reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease. Many studies have suggested that omega-3 PUFA play a major role in ameliorating the cardiovascular disorders such as thrombosis. The diet rich in omega-3 also reduces platelet aggregation and it reduces the blood pressure, so it leads to lowers the cholesterol level, total cholesterol level, and lowers the LDL cholesterol level, and it also lowers the pro-inflammatory mediators such as prostaglandins and leukotrienes and thromboxanes. Next, I would like to tell about the how that omega-3 PUFA is helpful for the cardiovascular function. The action of omega 3 are playing a diverse functions. Yeah, one the main function is it influence to decrease of the inflammatory response by NF kappa B, and another pathway it increase the beta oxidation by PPR alpha, and through this it catabolism of triglycerides, and it lowers the very low density lipoprotein. And not only that one, then it goes to the stored in the liver, and it forms both in the liver and vessel walls. In addition, by increasing the production of thromboxane A3 in vessel walls, the PFA decreased the vascular resistance and reducing the blood pressure. On the other hand, one of the most described effects of omega 3 is their action on cardiac arrhythmia. It alters the voltage gated channels like sodium potassium channel and calcium channels, and which leads to the lower heart rate. So before we talked about the cardiovascular function, how omega-3 is helpful, now I would like to tell about the molecular mechanism of cardioprotection by omega-3 PUFA. The omega-3 PUFA of long-chain omega-3 PUFA of EPA and DHA, it modulates the cell membrane property, so it alters the membrane fluidity, which incorporated into the phospholipid bilayer and control membrane in ion channels to prevent lethal arrhythmia. Also, omega 3 exert anti inflammatory and anti-fibrotic effects by modulating the NF kappa B signaling and NLRF3 inflammasome, and it alters the PPR gamma and GPR 120 and TGF beta signaling. Moreover, omega 3 play a major role in heart in maintaining the calcium homeostasis. Also, the omega 3 fatty acid is acts as an inhibitor of plasminogen and thus contributes to the fibrinolysis. So, before we talked about the potential of omega 3 in cardiovascular function, now I would like to tell about the how this omega 3 PUFA helps for the brain function, because brain is another important organ which is highly enriched in DHA. So the DHA is an essential fatty acid that is required for the normal development and function of the brain. The structure of the DHA it's a highly polyunsaturated fatty acid, and it consists of 22 carbon atoms and 6 double bonds. The molecular form of DHA is 355.12, and it is highly fluid and liquid form at room temperature. But still, because of its inability to synthesize the adequate amounts of DHA from the precursors, the brain has to acquire DHA through the blood brain barrier. The DHA is important throughout all stages of the life for brain, eye, and heart. From the maternal nutrition during and after pregnancy, it plays an important role in the fetal and infant development as well as in maternal well-being. It also promotes the maternal DHA status, and it increases the DHA content of the breast milk, and it also promotes the fetal brain and eye development, and mainly in the third trimester when significant brain growth occurs for the baby. These developing infants cannot efficiently produce their own DHA and must obtain their vital nutrient through the placenta. And moreover, in the infants and adult stage, it helps for the not only the low, it is help for the cardiovascular heart health, and not only for that cardiovascular heart health, it help for the better visual acuity, and it lowers the blood pressure. And in later stage also the DHA is very helpful, because in the older age there is a chance of like cognitive decline and cause like Alzheimer disease or Parkinson disease. So this DHA is more helpful to lower the risk of age related macular degeneration and neurodegenerative diseases. So the DHA is very important for the rapid brain growth and development. The DHA plays a vital role in the functions of the brain. It also modulates the membrane properties, especially the membrane fluidity of platelet membranes and synaptosomal membranes in the brain. And it also alters the membrane elasticity, thickness, and fusion ability. And the second important one is it alters the neurotransmitter levels in the brain, especially serotonin and dopamine neurotransmission. And it alters the gene expression of PPR, gamma, and RX retinoxide receptors. And it also acts as an anti-inflammatory metabolites because it produces the neuroprotectins NPD1 and marasins and resolvins. And it also uh, down regulate the inflammatory genes, pro-inflammatory genes. And now I would like to tell about the how the DHA plays a critical role in the brain function. But if there is a low DHA, there is a deficiency of DHA, it is known to contribute to Alzheimer disease or Parkinson disease, Huntington disease, or frontotemporal and Lewy body dementia, and ALS. It causes ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. So, since the brain cannot synthesize DHA, it needs to import it through the blood brain barrier. So, we need to find a way how to improve the bioavailability of omega 3 fatty acids in the brain. So one of the approaches we taken is like we can nano encapsulation is one of the good method to improve the omega 3 fatty acids in the brain. So what we did is we did the nano emulsion of oil in phospholipids can help in among the encapsulating materials. Phospholipid can help in improving the long chain omega 3 fatty acid status in the rats, and it can be an efficient delivery of omega 3 fatty acids. So what we saw the result is that the rats given alpha-linolic acid or docosahexaenic acid rich oil such as flaxseed oil or fish oil in the nano encapsulation form, it enriches the brain synaptic membrane with the DHA, and it also improves the neurotransmitter levels in the brain. So this helps for the changes for beneficial for cardiovascular health and functional components in the brain. The second one, so we able to increase it, but how it will be helpful for the potential for the brain functions, like whether this DHA can help for the Alzheimer disease and Parkinson disease. The Alzheimer disease is the sixth leading cause of death in the country. The Alzheimer disease is the most common cause of dementia, which accounts 60 to 80% of the cases. The You can see here there is an more accumulation of amyloid beta, and it damages the brain in pathology. So the symptoms of Alzheimer's are difficulties with the memory, and it affects the language and problem solving and capability, and it also affects a person ability to perform everyday activities. In the Parkinson disease, it affects the movement disorders. So DHA is an important omega 3 fatty acid for the brain function. If it is the low DHA, it leads to Alzheimer disease or Parkinson. So what we need to do, we need to provide the higher dietary intake of DHA so that it can be helpful for the prevention and treatment of the Alzheimer disease or Parkinson disease. The brain is highly depend upon the dietary DHA for its needs. There are different forms of DHA is commercially available. That is the triglycerides either as in fish oil or phospholipid form as in krill oil. But still, the clinical trials are failed to show that uh, these triglycerides is not improve the DHA in the brain. So what if we felt like we can provide in some other form other than the triglyceride form? So there are different molecular forms of DHA available in the plasma. One is in free fatty acid, triglycerides, cholesterol esters, and phospholipids. But recently, one of the studies has shown that the presence of a transporter that is like MFS TTA transporter, lysophosphatidylcholine transporter, it specifically transports DHA into the brain in the form of LPC. So we hypothesis that uh, if we provide the DHA in commercially available DHA in triglyceride form or triglyceride form such as whether it's commercially available fish oil or algal oil, what it's happening is it absorbs and reestablishes free DHA and it forms as triglyceride DHA. So if it forms triglyceride DHA, it is preventing to absorb the uh, DHA in the brain, so there is no uptake of DHA in the brain. And still, if we provide us a krill oil, even though has 30% of phospholipid is present in the krill oil, that also finally it forms as a free DHA and it's enter as a triglyceride DHA. There is no uptake of DHA in the brain. But if we provided as a DHA in the SN1 position or LPC DHA, lysophosphatidylcholine DHA, it activates a PLA2 and it forms as a LPC DHA and it absorbs and re-esterifies as a phosphatidylcholine DHA. So this DHA, it has the ability to increase uptake of DHA in the brain through the particular transporter. So what we saw is like we could able to increase the amount of DHA in the brain, but we want to know whether that is potential for the brain function. So we studied the cognitive function with the Morris Water Maze test. So here what we saw first before in that we had run the acquisition phase and probe trial. So in the acquisition phase all the mice has learned to find the platform, but in the probe trial after 24 hours the long term memory, so in that time there is uncertainty to latency to find the platform, the LPC DHA, and there was a longer time spent in the target quadrant of the LPC DHA when compared to the control and free DHA. So this indicates that LPC omega 3 showed significantly improved the spatial learning and memory. So next we would like to see the physiological mechanisms which helps for the neurodegenerative diseases. So what we studied the microglia, because the microglia are the main cellular components for the innate immune system, and in the brain it plays a vital role in regulation and protection of the central nervous system homeostasis, because microglia is forming into two phenotype, one is in M1 and M2. The M1 it activates a pro-inflammatory cytokines and it causes neuronal damage, whereas M2 phenotype like the DHA it helpful and it forms the anti-inflammatory metabolites like resolvins, neuroprotectins and marasins. It helps for the neuroprotection. So the recent studies have shown that excessive activation of microglia it leads to the inflammation mediated neurotoxicity, whereas the DHA modulates the inflammatory and anti-neurogenic functions of activated microglial cells. So the recommendations of omega 3 is like at least fat has to provide 30% of total calories. The saturated fat has to be below 10%. The polyunsaturated fatty acid at least 7 to 10% calories. But in that polyunsaturated fatty acid, we need to know the omega 3 and omega 6 ratio. Omega-6 PUFA at least 3%, and omega-3 PUFA 0.25 to 0.54%. And not only the omega-6, omega-3, the monounsaturated fatty acids also very important. It's around 12 to 14%. If we see the ideal ratio of saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated, it can be like 1 is to 1 is to 1 or 1 is to 2 is to 1. So do we have such an oil? But actually, practically, it is not there. So the blended oil or structured lipid could be a good option. So the right kind of fats in our diet is good for us and necessary because they can provide an important source of energy. And omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids are two types of essential fatty acids in nature because it cannot be synthesized in the body. It has to be acquired through the diet. So this omega-3 is helpful for the supporting key functioning for cardiovascular, reproductive, immune and nervous systems. And it also they reduce the risk of death from CHD and CVD mortality. And it also helps for the prevention and treatment of Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson disease. And it also helps for the decreased risk of developing age-related macular degeneration and retinopathy. So, thank you for giving an.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sugasini. It's a great presentation. Thanks
Yeah,
so much. Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, let me switch my video. Yeah. So I like very much myself.
Yeah,
So several questions, of course,
yeah.
we may have. Let's see if anyone have, or if not, so they can prepare. But myself, number one question could be, so we have different kind of omega-3s. And what is the real reason nature created so different kind of omega-3s? And for some reason nowadays look like lots of advertisement for EPA and DHA. Do you think that really they are much better, or simply because of it's more commercialized because of fish? What do you think?
No, like the fish oil is commercially what is available. It can be helpful for the cardio protection, but it is not for the brain function. For brain function, because that fish oil is in triglyceride form, the molecular form is very important. For the brain, phospholipid form is important, but whatever they are advertising, that is not that much in. For cardiac, it is helpful, but it's not for brain.
Okay, so ALA for which function is important?
Alpha linolenic acid is helpful for cardiovascular function.
For cardiovascular.
Yeah, cardiovascular and cardiac. It also treat antiarrhythmic. It has an antiarrhythmic effect. But only thing is the ALA conversion is below 2%. Like the conversion of EP and DHA, finally it has to convert to EP and DHA. That conversion is very low. So we need to consume more amount of alpha linolenic acid.
Yes, that's another question. Yeah, really, which percentage is converting in different place? So there's a different.
And for vegetarian people, that is the option.
Might be when we consuming more, so
Yeah.
then
If
so
they are
then
consuming
it's
daily
convertation.
basis, so they may get some omega-3.
Yeah. Also, I read that depend from the status of disease, whatever disease person may have. So might be in normal situation, what I read. So it's more gonna convert more percentage, but then person have some disease, depending, of course. So then that could be a low percent.
Yeah, correct.
Yes. What else? Yeah, one other thing I would might be more suggestion rather than question, but you can see. So what I would like to say, yeah, there's 1,000 investigations on omega-3, on different omega-3s. But then at the end, we are not sure exactly which dosage for which particular disease, for which particular uh, group of people. This is what actually functional food science care more.
Mm.
So if you're gonna go now to PubMed, for example, or in Scopus or in Web of Science and finding best journals where articles about omega-3, so they're gonna have a very different outcome. And
Yeah.
even more, we know that in many journals, when you don't have a positive
Mm.
outcome, they may not even publish your paper.
Mm.
But at the end, it is not in conditions that medical doctors now going to say, okay, you have this disease, let's go and do this, get this much of omega-3, and you're going to be in good, uh, you know, um, situation or whatever. That is a thing, and not only with omega-3, but with many other bioactive compounds. That's what's happening. So food scientists or some other scientists, they show that this is work, but
Mm.
some other professional, they may show that, oh, it is not working. So then we have to find out all those details. We have
Mm.
to figure out exact dosage and mechanism of action, and why in uh, some cases they are not working. So maybe also because it's clinical trials, so they are very small, and you have only 20, 30 people here. They are in control in different groups. So then it's not enough to conform.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's why many time from doctors, and not regular doctors, but medical doctors from Harvard Medical School.
Mm.
So then when they publishing and checking out publishing, and mostly it's not a positive. They cannot say that, okay, this bioactive compound, it is excellent and we can simply use, prevent or manage disease.
Yeah. Because
So
clinical trial is very difficult to do and get the approval, everything is very difficult in clinical. That's the reason we are going for preclinical. But still, we need to confirm in clinical. I understand. Thanks for your valuable suggestion.
yeah, and another couple thing is that our group come up that even in Japan mostly, they
Mm.
do clinical trials, they figuring out what's the
Mm.
mechanism of action, and they do kind of 7 weeks
Mm.
experiment, and getting very, very good information and putting in packages. But still, because of small case, small amount of
Mm.
patient, so this is not enough. So our group at the end come up with the suggestion that to be conformed, that we have in our hand real functional food product. So then we have to do some epidemiological studies with instead 100, but having several thousand people in that epidemiological study, and see if we can conform that
Mm.
certain dosage and kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And even more, another step is so getting a aftermarket study. So
Mm.
what's happened? So for example, people consumed 1 year, 2 year. So then do some research. What happened with those people who consumed? Did they really get that benefit that we described in a package or whatever in investigations, including clinical investigations?
Yeah, that research will be good and successful also. If it makes successful, the compound will be good for consumption.
Okay, great.
Mm. Thank
So
you.
then I don't see any other questions. So thanks so much
Yeah, thank you
uh,
so much.